Everybody, my name is Landon, and this will be my review of the Traxxas Mini Maxx. The Mini Maxx is the smallest member of the Traxxas Max family. It is a 1/16th scale four-wheel drive electric monster truck that currently retails for $249.95. Those of you that are familiar with the Max family will recognize this chassis because it is a perfectly scaled down version of the Max chassis. Now, I don't know about you, but the first thing I noticed the quickest about this chassis was how full or tightly packaged it seems. The reason for this is because Traxxas used 1/10 scale sized parts. The shock absorbers are 1/10 scale sized. In fact, they are the exact same shock absorbers that are standard on all of the Traxxas 1/10 scale offerings that use plastic body shocks. They are silicone oil filled and are tunable. The steering servo is the Traxxas 2056, again, straight out of their 1/10 scale offerings. It powers a rack-style steering system with solid plastic turnbuckles, so front toe is not adjustable and neither is the rear. In fact, none of the suspension geometry is adjustable as the truck uses solid plastic upper arms for the suspension on both the front and rear, so camber cannot be adjusted either. The hubs are filled with ball bearings on all four corners and use plastic slider shafts. Now, speaking of the hubs, to complement them, the truck features Traxxas's sledgehammer style of tire. These are off-road style tread design and use a medium firmness compound that should provide decent tread life even on road. Lastly, the power system is the Traxxas BL2S, which is their entry-level brushless system that is offered on most of their two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive offerings that can handle up to 2S or 7.4 volts. The ESC has a training mode that can limit the top speed to 50%, for new drivers, and it has ABS or anti-lock braking system, which actually works really well, I have found. The top speed with the included battery is about 30 miles per hour, and this is the included battery. It is a 2S 3500 milliamp hour LiPo. With the included charger, that is nothing more than just a power adapter. The charge time is about 2 hours, and you can expect about 15 to 20 minutes of runtime per charge. Now, the interesting thing about this battery is that it is exclusive to this truck. It is about 75% the size of a standard 1/10 scale battery. Bad thing is this means you really can't upgrade to a larger capacity battery, as 3500 milliamps is probably the best you're going to get out of a battery of this physical size. And there is a large controversy related to this, and I will get into that later. For starters, even with the basic brushless system, this truck is very quick and plenty fast for its size. This is more than enough for most people. For off-road style tires, the on-road traction was actually pretty decent, I felt. It has enough grip to make the truck want to body roll around turns, squat when you accelerate, and dive when you hit the brakes. If you take a sudden turn too fast, the truck will actually flip over. Um, and here are those brakes I talked about earlier, plenty strong, and since this truck has ABS, they will not lock up. And that is good. That is a good thing because it puts much less stress on the drivetrain, especially the spur gear. A lot of beginners will either accidentally apply too much brake or just panic and unintentionally lock up the wheels. And what that does is it puts a lot of sudden shock through the drivetrain, and it is very common to strip the plastic spur gear on four-wheel drive vehicles by locking up the brakes on the high traction surface. And ABS basically completely eliminates that risk, and I personally really like that. It's always nice when something is made just easier and more air-free for a beginner. Now on loose gravel, the tires did not perform as well. As you can see here, it just slides all over the place, and it actually takes a fair bit of skill as a driver to keep it straight on a loose surface. Um, the concern with this is I worry the most about young kids that aren't mature enough to have a sense for digital proportional control and counter steering, and would basically just want to be full throttle the entire time. You can drive this truck successfully on loose surfaces, but it takes a fair amount of throttle modulation and counter steering. It is very fun to drive like this, at least I find. It's enjoyable to, just master the control of a vehicle on a difficult surface. But if you want to unlock the full potential of this platform on a surface like this, you need to invest in better tires. Now, by far the terrain this truck is the happiest on is very fine gravel and dirt, like you can find at a sand or gravel pit. As you can see here, the truck is much happier. On this terrain, just like asphalt, it actually has enough grip to want to flip over if you take a sudden turn at speed. Now, one thing to note, by the way, when running on a surface with loose rocks or pebbles, is on multiple occasions I actually got rocks stuck between the chassis and the steering rack, which would limit the range of steering in one direction. Now, this is annoying, but it's not that big of a deal as I never had to actually take anything apart to get the rock out. I had just had to kind of pry it out with either, a pair of needle nose pliers or a screwdriver. Also, I would get rocks caught between one of the rear wheels and the hub, and this would cause one of the rear wheels to just randomly lock up and make the truck suddenly spin out. Again, this is very annoying, but not that big of a deal. Every time I was able to fix this by just backing up and then going forward again, and this would kind of dislodge the rock. Now, the center of gravity on this chassis actually seemed fairly low, even for a four-wheel drive vehicle, and with the ride height being fairly high for the size of it, it was kind of low, and that's just thanks to the clever packaging they used and keeping the battery kind of the center and to low to the ground. You can see here I was actually able to climb up and down these very tall hills of dirt with basically no problem, and I could kind of, drive sideways across them, which was kind of nice. Um, and the truck also takes jumps very well, which is just kind of nature of having a lower center of gravity. Now it is time to get back to some studio footage because there's are some things I wish to talk about. First, if you've seen my unboxing video, you should remember my complaints I had about the rear suspension sort of getting stuck at the bottom of its travel. Well, the culprit to this was the rear suspension pins. Both the top and the bottom were way too tight, and this caused a lot of resistance in the suspension arms. Now, this was further dramatized, I have found, when I ran it in damp gravel. As you can see in this clip here, they were basically getting stuck halfway up their travel. I had to manually push it back up, and this just caused the truck to handle very poorly. Now, I was able to fix this by taking my 2.5 millimeter hex wrench, lubing it up with some bearing oil, and forcing it through the pinholes. This enlarged the hole by removing some excess plastic and significantly reduced the resistance. I had to do this for both the top and bottom pinholes on both sides. The front seemed fine, it was just the rear that seemed to have this issue. I also had to address the slider shafts. They had way too much resistance, and this also hampered with the suspension. I was able to fix this by taking my pair of snips and sort of scraping off some of the excess plastic, kind of in the mold seams here. Now I had to do this on both sides on the front and rear. The front was actually affected by this. And now speaking of the front, the steering had to be addressed as well. It was just way too tight and put a lot of strain on the steering servo. It eventually got to the point to where it would not fully return to center, and the vehicle would kind of want to wander off to one side or another. And I found the cause of this to be the lower hub screws. They were just way too tight in their holes, and the resistance overpowered the servo and the spring style servo saver. And I was able to fix this by taking a drill bit and running it back and forth in the hole to remove some of the plastic. This increased the clearance and freed up the steering significantly. And after doing all of these, sort of homemade suspension mods, the suspension was a lot better, and I now am happy with it. Lastly, and this is the biggest issue with these trucks. Remember earlier when I mentioned the controversy related to the battery? Well, this truck is advertised of being 3S power ready or 11.1 volts. Now, since the BL2S system is only capable of running 2S, that means you will have to upgrade to a more powerful system in order to run 3S. Now, naturally, a more powerful system will use more power, and since this battery is proprietary to this truck, you cannot upgrade to a larger capacity battery, so your runtime will naturally be diminished. However, this isn't the controversy. The controversy is that the truck is not 3S ready. People have been blowing out their diffs when running 3S. It's just the grade of metal that Traxxas used for the diffs just cannot take the increased power of 3S, and it's just been destroying differentials. Now, to wrap it up, I think it is a very fun truck. The small size and excellent power to weight ratio make it just an absolute thrill to drive. For the size, I think the price is a bit steep, however, considering there are many 1/10 scale sized vehicles for less than $250. However, many of them will not be four-wheel drive or come with a battery that can provide, an up to 20-minute runtime, depending on how aggressive you're driving. So it's, the value here is relative. It all depends on what you want from the vehicle. And again, it does have some design flaws with the very stiff suspension pins, the slider shafts being way too tight, and the front hub screws being way too tight. But all of this is fixable for free, assuming you already have the tools on hand to do this. It, however, is kind of crappy that the consumer has to address these issues to begin with. But many of us in this hobby are technical minded and mechanically inclined, and we are more than able to fix this kind of stuff. And some lower end brands are kind of infamous for these issues out of the box. Thunder Tiger and Red Cat come to mind. But I honestly expected better from Traxxas. Despite what the biased and honest internet haters will tell you, Traxxas products are actually very good and well designed. And as far as RTR or ready to run goes, they are some of the best on the market. Now, their business ethics is another story, and I'm not going to get into that in this video. However, it is not cool to release a product on a false claim. In factory form, you cannot run these on 3S reliably and will have to upgrade to aftermarket diffs. Now, these aftermarket diffs seem to retail between $80 to $120 depending on where I look. So worst case scenario, you will be about $380 into a $250 RC car just to get it to do what it is advertised of being capable of doing to begin with. If you do not plan on running 3S and you just want to stick to 2S, I think you will be very happy with it. This truck is immense fun, and I had a blast testing it. The only breakage I suffered personally was just the front bumper kind of broke off the front shock tower on one side. And to fix this, it would cost $7. Personally, I'm not too worried about it, and I'm probably not going to bother fixing it. So all in all, if you like what you see here based on these videos and you're okay with just sticking to 2S, it is a very fun truck. They do hold up under 2S I've seen. I haven't seen anybody having any issues with 2S, and I have about 8 battery packs through this truck and have not had any issues. Now, again, it's just for the size, I think it is a little steep, but other companies offer smaller and much less capable vehicles for the same price. But if you're on the fence about it, I would say just get it, because you can always just sell. If you don't like it, always just sell it and get something else. I mean, in my opinion, that's kind of the joy of the hobby. So all in all, personally, I'm happy with it. And here's again, if you do not want to run 3S, I recommend it. It is a fun truck, and I had a blast with it. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.